Let's talk about layers in Photoshop Elements 8. Let's make a new blank file, and 8.5 by 11 is fine for this. 300 pixels per inch, always, because you'll probably be printing these. Drag the window up to the orange line, let it go, and you'll notice that the layers palette is over on the right here. There's also effects. If you really don't need that open, so double click on effects, close that up if it's visible, or go up to window and just get that unchecked. When I made this file, I was concentrating more on the size of it and resolution rather than the background. Now this checkerboard pattern means there's no pixel values at all. There's nothing there yet. If I had made a new blank file and I wanted there to be pixels there, I could make the background contents be the background color, in this case, which is white, or sorry, black, or I could make it white. Okay, and that depends on what you're going to be using it for. It's just a convenient thing. The only trouble with starting with a background layer like white or black is that this is locked until you release it. You need to double click that to let it be editable and easily used. So double click on that, press OK. In this one, you'll notice that layer 1 began without having to be locked because we started with transparent pixels. So we have emptiness here. I wanted to maybe create some little doodad for this video, and I thought an artist that I think is really cool would be a good starting point just to demonstrate a few ideas. So I can drag pictures from my pictures or from a file location to the project bin or to this canvas space, and it'll open up as a separate document. And in order to get this as a new layer on my document, I'm going to have to drag it using the move tool. So you click anywhere on one of these pixels and you drag into here. It's important to make sure that you select one of those pixels. There's a million in here, so it should be easy. Anyway, very tiny. This is a little bit smaller than I'd like, but let's just zoom in. I'm holding Control and Spacebar right now and dragging a box around the area I want zoomed for demonstration purposes. I can take a text tool, draw myself a text box, and change the color of that, and I will have a text layer. And this text layer, you'll notice, has a different kind of thumbnail than the other two. The other two have the checkerboard pattern. This one shows that it is a vector. That means that no matter how we resize it, I'm using the move tool to resize it now, it'll stay crisp. So, I mean, that's something to consider. If you wanted to turn these into pixels again, you can right click on this and simplify the layer, and now you can do things to it like erase it or treat it like however you want. Do whatever you want with it. It's important in Photoshop to work in separate layers so that you can modify them independently. So for instance, if I wanted to modify layer 2 in some special way, I could adjust the color of it and boost that without boosting or modifying the black. That can stay as it is. So it's important to keep things separated. To create a new layer, you go down to this button that looks like a square with folded up side corner of the paper, and you click on it and it'll make a new layer for you. They are named in number order, but you can feel free to rename them by double clicking on that word, on the layer word, and you could say, I'll just call this brush strokes because that's what I'm about to do. So you've got all sorts of brush tools that you could use. Choose one that you like. So I've got my brush, I've made it the correct size, and I'm just going to do a sweeping motion down through it. Now this kind of looks crazy at the moment, but if I change the layer interaction between this layer and this layer and this layer, you'll see some interesting things begin to happen. So let's try it. So the blending mode between layers is normally set to normal, but if you click on this normal, just click, you can cycle down through the different options using the down arrow, and that can go from dissolve to darken, multiply, and you can get some pretty cool effects. So, um, you know, choose something you think suits your communicative goal, and that is the layers blending mode that you've just selected. So that's a cool thing that you could do between layers. Another thing you should know about is the layer order. This really depends on what you want to have visible over top of things. For instance, if keto was underneath layer 2, you would not be able to see it. All of the pixels in layer 2 would cover those up. So layer order is important, and you change the layer order by clicking and dragging on one of these layers over here and moving it down below one of the others until you see it snap into place. Same with this layer style. Like if this blending mode is down below here, you're not going to get the same effect. So be careful with where that's positioned in order to achieve the right blending mode. If I'm doing lots of adjustments to this piece and I realize that I keep accidentally moving a particular layer, or if I don't want a layer to be adjusted in any way accidentally, I can simply lock it. And the lock button is down here, and you click on that, and that will lock that layer up, so I wouldn't be able to move it with my move tool if I tried. You know, there's no response there from that layer. Opacity is another feature of this. So if I wanted to position this and make it not totally opaque, you could partly see through it. I can change the opacity and play with that kind of transparency. So opacity lets you see through the pixels that are on a layer. If you wanted to delete a layer, feel free. You can get rid of that. You can you can click on that layer and then you could drag it down to the garbage can. Or, of course, you could right click on it and delete layer. Another cool feature about these layers, especially this thumbnail, is that as you hold down Control, you can click on this thumbnail and it'll select all of the pixels in that layer. So you don't need to specifically go around and select that bit and be in this layer and then make an adjustment to those. You can instead hold down Control, click in this layer thumbnail, this little picture of what's on the layer, and it'll select all of the pixels on that layer, even if they're very transparent. However, a pixel on that layer is going to get selected if you hold down Control and click on it. So that's a very convenient thing, especially if you wanted to, you know, change colors in some way. Oops, I pressed delete. If I went to my brush and wanted to modify it, boost the opacity, Control D to deselect. You know, you can start to mess with things. So that are specific to that layer and nothing else. So again, Control, click on that to select all the pixels on that layer. Another advanced thing that you can do for my advanced students is click on this little black-white circle down here to create a new adjustment layer. And you can do all sorts of these layers. You can, the most probably frequent one that I'll do is levels or hue saturation. So let's give that a shot. And levels for the whole image will be applied. So all of the dark values, all of the middle values, and all of the white light values can be adjusted to create something very, you know, rich, depending on how you adjust those. And output levels, I would ignore that unless you're focusing on maybe muting a particular side of the spectrum. Like output will just limit the amount of visible pixels to between black and like let's say 60% gray or something like that. So that's all you're going to get. It crunches all the values into a smaller spectrum. I like to have a full spectrum. I think that offers the greatest amount of interest. But if you need to like put some text in front of this and just have a muted image with black text or something, that's totally cool. Yeah, there are good reasons to do almost everything in this program. If you're realizing, oh, I wanted to see all those layers again, you could double click on this adjustments tab and it'll minimize. So that's about it for our layers. Um, Oh, one last thing, merging. So if you wanted to merge some layers, you can feel free. There's several different ways to merge. You could hold down Control and click on different layers to select more than one layer. And you might want to merge these brush strokes with my text layer. And you can merge those, but you'll get some funny effects because blending modes might become obsolete. They might go away if you merge things. So careful with that.